Most people think they're hitting a codex token limit, but they're not. They're hitting a context pollution limit. And those are not the same thing. If you treat them like the same problem, you solve it the wrong way. You ask for a bigger window, complain about the model, and keep pushing the same thread harder. But the real issue is usually this. Your task is not too big. Your thread is too messy. Later in this video, I will show you the one habit that completely changed how I use Codex on long projects. It is not a command, it is not a secret setting, it is a better way to think about sessions. But first, look how people use Codex. They paste a huge log, then they paste a full file, then they repeat the same project rules. Then Codex tries something, it fails, they correct it. Codex tries again, and now the thread contains the original problem. The wrong solution, the correction, the new solution, and boom, 4,000 lines of terminal output. And then they say, Codex got nerfed. No, the session is polluted. So in this video, I'm not going to show you how to delete token limits. That is not the promise. I'm going to show you how to work in a way where token limits rarely become the thing that stops you. The goal is simple. Stop wasting the context window. Before the tactics, you need one mental model. Codex has two different kinds of limits people mix together. The first one is your usage limit. That is about your plan, credits, billing, rate limits, or whatever your account has access to. That is not the main thing we are talking about here. The second one is the context window. Think of the context window like the working memory of the thread. It is not just your last message. It can include your prompt, Codex replies, tool calls, tool outputs, files, Codex reads, instructions from AGENTS.md, and summarize from compaction. So every time you keep going in the same thread, you are not just adding one tiny message, you're asking Codex to keep working inside a growing pile of history. Some of that history is valuable, most of it is not. And this where the real problem starts. If the useful stuff gets buried under old logs, failed approaches, repeated instructions, and irrelevant files, the thread starts to erode. That is context pollution. And context erode is what it feels like later. Codex gets less focused. It asks about things you already explained. It keeps circling around old attempts, or it makes a vague change because the actual signal is buried. So the whole strategy in this video is not make Codex breathe less. It is keep the main thread clean. Now let me show you the system. The first mistake is the easiest one to fix. Stop pasting entire files into the chat when Codex can read those files. Here's the bad version of a prompt that you might send. Here's my whole component. Here's the API file. Here's the full log. Fix it. That feels helpful, but it's usually noisy. And here's the better version. Fix the dashboard loading bug. Relevant files. Path to whatever file you want it to get access to, and path to API file, and patch to log. Reproduce with the specific command. Start by inspecting these files and planning the fix before editing. The prompt gives Codex a map, not a suitcase. You're telling it where to look, what command proves the issue, and how to begin. And notice the last line, plan before editing. That one line can save you a lot of wasted turns. Because the fastest way to burn tokens is to let Codex confidently implement the wrong idea. This one matters, especially if you use the IDE extension. The IDE open files and selected code can become context. This is great when the files are relevant. It's terrible when you have 12 random tabs open from yesterday. So before a serious task, do a 10-second cleanup. Close related file. Remove all selection. Mention the files that matter and say what should be ignored. For example, focus on path to a specific file and path to a specific file. Ignore the old implementation under whatever file you want to ignore unless a failing task directly depends on it. That is a small prompt, but it prevents Codex from treating every nearby file as equally important. And that's the theme of this whole video. Do not make Codex guess what matters. Tell it. Now if you type the same rules into every prompt, you are wasting context. Something like use pnpm or do not add dependencies or run the tests, etc, etc, in Codex that belongs in agents.md. And Codex reads agents.md before it starts work, and you can use it at different levels: global, repo level, and even folder specific. So instead of repeating your team rules every single time, put the stable ones there. But here's the trap. Do not turn agents.amd into a book. If it becomes a giant philosophy document, you just move the evolution from your prompt into the startup context. So keep it practical. Good agents.amd content looks like install commands, dependency rules, definition of done, and patterns that actually affect the work. The practical lesson is simple: short, accurate instruction beat long, vague instructions every time. Now this is where a lot of tokens disappear, not because Codex is writing too much, because it's working on the wrong thing. You give it a vague task, it reads files, it picks an approach, it edits, it fills, and you say, no, that is not what I meant. Now the thread contains the original task, the wrong approach, the failed output, and your correction. That is expensive. So when the task is unclear, start with /plan. Use something like /plan to gate this bug first. Do not edit files yet. Identify the smallest likely file set. The reproduction command, risks, and an implementation plan. Planning is not free, but fixing the wrong implementation is such more expensive. So the rule is, if your task is fuzzy, do not pay for execution yet. Pay for clarity first. For longer tasks, use /goal. But please do not write goals like this. /goal make the dashboard better. That is not a goal, that is a mood. Write it like an acceptance task. /goal fix the dashboard of bug. The login state should persist after refresh. Existing UI behavior should stay the same, and npm test dashboard should pass. Now Codex has a target. It knows what should stay true. It knows what command matters, and it has a way to judge whether the work is actually done. And something is important too. /goal does not make the context window infinite. It does not remove limits. What it does is reduce a different kind of waste. Work that does not move toward the finish line. So if you know what done means, use /goal. If you do not know yet, start with /plan. This is the part where people usually ignore until it is too late. Codex gives you ways to inspect and manage the session. And the CLI /status can show things like the thread ID, context usage, rate limits, and session details. /compact summarizes the visual conversation to free space in the context. And /new starts a fresh conversation inside the same CLI session. The exact UI depends on where you use Codex. So do not memorize this as one magic screen. Memorize the habit. Check the session before it breaks. Depending on your Codex surface, you may also have signals like context remaining in the status line, session logs, or usage monitoring on certain plans and workspaces. And use whatever visibility you have. In fact, while the thread is still understandable, start fresh when the objective changes. But do not treat compaction like permission to dump everything into chat. Compaction helps, but if the thread is full of garbage, the summary still has to decide what matters inside that garbage. So use it early, use it deliberately. Now we get to the habit I teased at the start. This is the thing that changed long Codex work for me. Stop thinking, how do I keep this one thread alive forever? Start thinking, what session am I in right now? A long project is not one conversation. It's usually a chain of smaller sessions: discovery, planning, execution, and review. Each session should have one job. Here's what that looks like. For discovery, your prompt might look like: explore the codebase and identify the relevant files and architecture. Do not edit. Return a concise discovery brief with file references only. For planning, get the discovery brief if you have. Then you tell it this: turn this discovery brief into an implementation plan with risks and verification. Do not edit yet. For execution, you give it a plan, then say implement this plan only. Keep it changes scope and verify the listed command. You do not need this for every tiny bug, but for big refactors, migrations, or multi-area features, this is huge. Event recovery does not need every execution failure. Execution does not need every random exploration node. Review does not need every wrong path from the beginning, and the bridge between sessions is a handoff. Before the thread becomes painful as Codex for a handoff. Something like create a handoff summary for a fresh Codex thread. Include the goal, current status, files changed or inspected, decisions made, command runs, failures, next exact step, and things not to repeat. Keep it practical and file path focused. Then start a new thread with that summary. This is not starting over. This is continuing with cleaner memory. The new thread does not need every command output. It just needs the goal, what you learn, the files that matters, what not to repeat, and the next exact step. And this is the closest thing to never hit your token limit. Not because limits disappear, but because you stop forcing one thread to carry the entire project history. One more thing. Watch your own patterns. If you keep repeating the same instructions, move them to AGENTS.md. If you keep pasting logs, put them in files. If Codex keeps reading the same files, give it a tighter file set. If the thread is losing focus, do not fire it forever. Create the handoff. Start the next session. That is the system. This rule alone can save a lot of context. If you have a massive build log, do not paste the whole thing into the chat. Put it in a file. Then ask Codex to extract the signal, like this. The full log is in temp/build.log. Find the first real failure, summarize the cause, and quote only the minimum lines needed. Ignore the repeated warnings unless they change diagnosis. The important stack trace deserves attention. 4,000 repeated warnings do not. Codex config also has a concept called tool output token limit, which is a reminder that tool output has a context cost too. So treat output like evidence, not decoration. You want the few lines that it changed diagnosis, not the entire terminal history. Before giving Codex a PDF, HTML page, or docx, ask one question first. Do I need the layout or do I need the text? If you need the text, Markdown is often cleaner. So instead of feeding Codex layout, metadata, and formatting noise, give it the actual content. Use a prompt like I converted the source document to Markdown at docs/source.amd. Use that as the primary context. Do not infer layout sensitive details unless they appear in the text. Now, if the layout is the source of truth, Markdown is not enough. If the image, table, screenshot, or visual structure matters, say that. But for tech-heavy docs, Markdown is usually a cleaner input. Sub-agents are powerful, but they are not a magic save tokens button. In fact, sub-agents can use more total tokens because each agent does its own model and tool work. So why use them? Because they keep the main thread clean. Use them when the work is read heavy, for log analysis or test triage and security review, or large codebase exploration, and even comparing approaches. Here's a good prompt. Use parallel sub-agents for read-only investigation, spawn one for test failures, one for architecture impact, and one for edge cases. Each returns a concise summary with file references only. Wait for all agents, then combine findings into one plan. The keywords are read-only and summary. That is the win. You're not asking 10 agents to fight over the same file. You're asking them to absorb noisy details and return the useful signal. Avoid sending multiple agents to edit the same files at the same time. That usually creates a coordination work, and coordination work burn tokens too. The point is not to obsess over every token. The point is to notice the habits that waste them. If you want one practical thing to copy from this video, copy this template, which you will find in the description. This works because it tells Codex to 5 things: what matters, where to look, what to avoid, how to prove the work is done, and how to respond without dumping noise back into the thread. That is the entire game. Before a big Codex session, run this checklist. Is the goal clear? Is the definition of done clear? Did I reference files instead of pasting them? Is my IDE context clean? Or repeated rules in AGENTS.md? Do I need /plan first? Do I need /goal first? Should I run /status /compact or start a new thread? Will large log live in a file? Do I need subagents for read-only investigation? Do I have a handoff point if the thread gets long? If you do this, you're not removing token limits. You're just refusing to burn through them for no reason. So the big idea is simple. Codex is not just a giant chat box. It is an agent working inside a limited attention budget. Protect that budget and the work gets cleaner. Your session stay focused, your correct less, and token limits stop being the thing that constantly interrupts you. If you found this video useful, drop a like and subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you in the next one.